Ari Aster's Midsommar is a movie about abandonment and acceptance, the themes which Aster already explored in Hereditary in a much more horrific and terrifying way. Midsommar, on the other hand, is a much more peaceful and eye-pleasing picture, with a slow pace and a funny commentary on inner desire to break away from strings attached to past mistakes and troubles of overcoming issues within yourself. In this particular movie, A24 went as far as creating new alphabet out of runes and hieroglyphs to show each character's traits, creating new lenses to give the whole piece as aesthetically pleasing technical a look as it has, and making murals which tell us each character's fate within a story. But we are going to talk about the way Asta shows grief and makes us as viewers question what is right and what is wrong throughout the whole movie. To analyze Midsommar, I'm going to use the Kubler-Ross model, or the 5 stages of grief, which postulates a series of emotions experienced by terminally ill patients prior to death, or people who have lost a loved one, wherein the 5 stages are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Origin of trauma and fears of our protagonist is being explained in the first 10 minutes of the movie. Danny's sister committing murder/homicide, leaving Danny completely alone with boyfriend that doesn't care that much about her anyway, shows what her weaknesses and phobias are. And this brings us to the first stage. Denial. Danny sees going to Sweden as a good opportunity to get out and try to move on from the tragic event. But it is not realistic. What she actually does is she's bringing this emotional baggage with her. In her case, denial is in disengagement from the past and forcing own self into doing what everyone else is doing. Right away, she's agreeing to taking drugs because she feels obliged to, and word like family triggers her memory and makes her feel paranoid. This perception of the world's fast pacing and growing anxiety is shown through match cuts, blurred vision, hallucinations like a face of Danny's sister in the mirror, and most importantly, the fact that sun never sets. And that is actually a very interesting detail. 90% of everything we see is happening during the daytime, or during the times when the sun is still up. In horror genre, murder and terror is usually being shown at night, when a human is vulnerable and can't see much, can't think of much happening. Midsommar is the total opposite of what we expect to see, but it's still weird, odd, maybe even scarier than usual horror tropes. Guillermo del Toro says, "In my opinion, Midsommar is not a horror movie per se, no more than some of Bergman's Dark Parables would be. Thematically, it addresses the brutal purge that primal ritual context has above passive-aggressive subterfuge. Even Asta himself likes to see this film as a fairy tale of sorts, and that only shows that horror genre is on the verge of revolutionizing oneself. People are scarier than non-existent things." Why we as viewers are still scared and weirded out, and why Danny feels like an outcast? Because of the unknown. And that brings us to anger. It is the emotion that rules Danny, because of how self-conscious she really is. Usually anger is in control when she thinks of her actions, mistakes, and choices. Hallucinations and weird dreams have returned. After the murderous act of a life cycle ending, she's getting paranoid that her company is going to leave at any moment, and she's also angry about signing up for the deadly cult rituals in the first place. She's getting weak. Former cult member Ian Haworth has his explanations of what cult is usually doing to weak people in such situations.
I don't know why I'm here. I don't know, and I can't.
Come on,
No.
come on, sit down, Danny. Danny, please sit down.
This is a good clip, in my opinion. It's a form of love bombing, not to recruit someone, but to try and keep someone in the group at a point where their critical faculties have come back to the fore. So you bomb that person with love. You surround them with a lot of hugs and kisses. It's as funny as the $3 bill. It's conditional love, conditional on towing the party line. Everybody in a cult watches everyone else. And if anyone is weakening or slipping or whatever the terminology might be, then they'll pounce on that person psychologically and work on them.
Danny is living through such extreme emotions, and we also go through them with her. Asta states that he wanted to make film that felt as big as a breakup feels.
Like from a distance, if it's happening to someone you know or somebody else, it's like this silly thing and they're going to get over it and like, just pick yourself up by the bootstraps. But when you're in it, it can feel cataclysmic. And so I wanted to make a breakup movie that felt as consequential as a breakup feels.
Bargaining. This is not a stage in our protagonist's grief journey. This is her lifestyle. We see how she's being protective and defends Christian at the very beginning.
Look, I don't mind you going. I just wish you would have told me, that's all.
And he protects him from being criticized about forgetting her birthday.
No. I forgot to remind him, and it's not his fault. Never mind, it's okay.
Deep down, Danny knows that it's not right, and she's defending him out of her inner weakness and desire to give people chances, out of fear to lose the last string attached to the past life. But the more she thinks of it, the less attached she's becoming. Once being called the May Queen, their roles are being reversed. We see Christian, alone, drugged up, and disengaged, and Danny, being praised but still living in misunderstanding. She's still in oblivion, not only because of the drugs being constantly shoved into her, but also because she's scared of moving towards the unknown. Christian is just unaware of everything at this point. Depression. In this particular case, the depression stage are peak moments in Danny's life. Loss of her parents and loss of her boyfriend, who is the last connection to the past. These two particular moments have similarities. In both, Danny is screaming on top of her lungs from pain of the betrayal and loss. But in the beginning, she did not have support. Even then, Christian was disinterested, and her loss of parents only gave him an unwanted reason to not break things off before going to the festival. Between these two scenes, our protagonist went through first three stages, to the Christian's betrayal, and the acceptance, endless love of the new community she's in feels differently. Are we as viewers supposed to be happy that Danny finally found her family? Don't think so. Oster himself says,
if it is a horror film, I see it as a horror movie about codependency. And so she goes from a dysfunctional codependent relationship to, in the end, a more functional codependent relationship, which is arguably much more codependent.
Acceptance. Final scene. Danny chooses to sacrifice Christian. His death is not only the big revenge Oster initially planned to show, but Danny's freedom she craved. She has completed full circle of the 5-stage grief process to heal. This is a very logical and impressive ending. A24's starting goal with this movie was to bring the viewers closer to the character and what this character feels other than what people think is a particular plot twist means. And the grand finale is certainly about it. If anything, Midsommar did a great job at portraying a fight between heart and mind. Movie showed Danny's journey from a great loss to the new beginnings with a bit of humor and insane amount of detail.